Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for more true crime story. In American culture, childhood is sacred. It's a time associated with innocence, play, and unshakable trust. But what happens when that innocence is shattered, not by the world, but by the child themselves? When a young face, barely old enough to drive or vote, becomes the face of murder. This is not a horror film. These are real stories, and they challenge everything we thought we knew about right and wrong, nature and nurture, and most chillingly, about children. Take Eric Smith, for example. He was just 13 years old in 1993 when he lured 4-year-old Derek Roby into the woods of a quiet New York town. What happened next stunned a nation. Eric brutally beat the toddler with rocks, strangled him, and inserted a stick into his body. When asked why, Eric said he just wanted to know what it felt like. There was no history of abuse, no sign of severe mental illness, just a red-haired boy with glasses and a growing rage. The public was horrified. How could someone so young commit such a brutal act? Eric's trial sparked national debates about whether children should be tried as adults, what justice looks like for juvenile killers, and whether rehabilitation was even possible. But Eric Smith was just the beginning. In 1998, in Jonesboro, Arkansas, 2 boys, Mitchell Johnson, 13, and Andrew Golden, 11, pulled a fire alarm at their middle school. When students and teachers evacuated the building, the boys opened fire from a nearby wooded area with rifles they had stolen from Golden's grandfather. 5 people were killed. 10 others were injured. Then the boys simply dropped their weapons and surrendered. Because they were so young, neither could be held past the age of 21 under Arkansas law at the time. They served just a few years for mass murder. Today, they walk free. The public outcry was enormous. How could cold-blooded murderers be released while their victims' families suffered for life? Yet the law had never imagined children committing such horrific crimes. The justice system was unprepared. Then came Lionel Tate, who at age 12 became the youngest American ever sentenced to life in prison without parole. In 1999, in Florida, Lionel killed 6-year-old Tiffany Unick while his mother was babysitting her. He claimed they were just wrestling, mimicking moves from professional wrestling shows. But Tiffany's injuries, fractured skull, broken ribs, lacerated liver, told a different story. Was it an accident? Or did Lionel know what he was doing? Psychologists argued he couldn't fully grasp the consequences of his actions. But the prosecution painted a different picture. A violent boy with no regard for life. The court sided with the latter. At age 14, Lionel was sentenced to life. Years later, after national pressure, his sentence was overturned and modified. But the damage was done to him, to Tiffany's family, and to a system still figuring out how to handle child killers. So what turns a child into a murderer? Experts point to a cocktail of factors: exposure to violence, neglect, abuse, brain trauma, poor impulse control, and in some rare cases, psychopathy. The developing brain is more vulnerable, more impulsive, and often less capable of empathy. But is that an excuse? Or just an explanation? In a 2012 study published by the American Psychological Association, researchers found that juveniles who commit violent crimes often show early signs of aggression, but the majority had experienced significant trauma themselves. Yet, not all abused children become killers. Some survive, some heal, some break the cycle. So why do others snap? The truth is, there's no single cause. Some kids act out of anger, others out of curiosity, a few out of deep psychological disturbance. And in some rare, chilling cases, they kill for fun. One such case is that of Mary Bell, a British child killer who, at age 11, strangled 2 young boys in 1968. She carved her initials into one victim's body. She later told investigators, "I like hurting things." Though not American, her case is often cited by psychologists studying child psychopathy. Mary's mother was a prostitute who allegedly forced Mary to engage in sexual acts with clients. Was Mary born evil, or was she made? These are the questions that continue to haunt courts, psychologists, and communities. In the next chapters, we'll go deeper into the motivations, the trials, and the aftermath of some of the most shocking child murder cases in U.S. history. We'll meet the kids who smiled while confessing and those who broke down in tears. We'll hear from families left behind and experts trying to make sense of it all. And we'll ask the question no one wants to face. What happens when the monster under the bed? Is the child sleeping in it? When a child kills, the world rushes to ask one question. Why? We want to believe there's a reason. Something that separates them from us. Something that helps us sleep at night knowing our own children, our neighbors' children, could never do such a thing. But the reality is more disturbing. The minds of child killers aren't always warped by horror movies or fueled by evil. Sometimes they're just empty, emotionless, lacking remorse. That's what made Jesse Pomeroy, America's youngest known serial killer, so terrifying. Born in Boston in 1859, Jesse was just 11 when he began torturing neighborhood boys. He would lure them to isolated areas, tie them up and whip or stab them, letting them go only after hours of torment. At 14, he murdered 2 children, a 10-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy. His victims had been beaten, slashed, and mutilated. Psychiatrists of the time were baffled. Jesse was described as intelligent, articulate, and even polite. But beneath that exterior was a rage and sadism that defied his age. He was sentenced to life in solitary confinement. He would spend over 40 years in prison, mostly alone, an eerie symbol of what happens when darkness takes root too early. Fast forward more than a century to Joshua Phillips, age 14, from Jacksonville, Florida. In 1998, he killed his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton. Her disappearance launched a massive search. Police, neighbors, and even Joshua's own family looked for her, unaware that she was already dead, hidden under his waterbed mattress. Joshua later confessed he hit Maddie with a bat after a ball game and panicked. But the injuries told a darker story. Maddie had been stabbed repeatedly. Joshua had cleaned up and returned to his normal routine, playing video games, laughing with friends, sleeping soundly inches above the corpse. The horror wasn't just the crime. It was the calm that followed. Psychologists said Joshua exhibited signs of detachment and denial, common in adolescent offenders. But others argued that his emotionless recounting pointed to something deeper, a complete lack of empathy. This is where child killers split into different psychological categories. 1. The impulsive aggressor. These children act without thinking, often in the heat of the moment. They lash out with deadly consequences but usually show remorse. Their crimes are messy, panicked, and typically rooted in emotional outbursts. Many have untreated mental health conditions or come from violent households. 2. The calculated manipulator. These are the most dangerous. They plan, they lie, they cover up their crimes with shocking maturity. Some may mimic behaviors they've seen in movies or read about. Others are cold and methodical from a disturbingly young age. In 2014, Morgan Geyser and Anissa Weier, both 12, lured their friend Peyton Lutner into the woods in Wisconsin and stabbed her 19 times. Their motive? They believed doing so would appease a fictional horror character. Slender Man Peyton survived, but the girl's delusion sent shockwaves through the country. The question: can children truly understand fantasy from reality? In interviews, Morgan showed signs of schizophrenia. Her hallucinations had begun years earlier. Anissa, meanwhile, was heavily influenced by Morgan. The court had to decide, were they capable of understanding right from wrong? Were they victims of mental illness, peer pressure, or something worse? This case highlighted the gray area in juvenile justice. Yes, their minds are still developing, but does that excuse premeditated violence? Should a 12-year-old be sentenced like a 32-year-old? These are the questions judges, juries, and psychologists wrestle with. Because the reality is, child killers don't always look like killers. They sit in classrooms, play on swing sets, and do homework. Some are abused, some are bullies, some are brilliant, and some are just blank. Their minds don't follow the typical patterns of remorse or fear. They process reality in ways even seasoned professionals struggle to understand. Neuroscience offers some clues. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making and impulse control, is one of the last parts of the brain to mature. In teenagers, especially boys, this area can lag years behind emotional development. Combined with trauma, mental illness, or exposure to violence, the results can be catastrophic. But understanding isn't the same as forgiving. The families of victims still want justice. Communities want safety, and the system often has to choose between two flawed options: lock a child away for life or hope that rehabilitation works. One former juvenile killer put it best during an interview from prison. "I don't know why I did it. I just didn't feel anything. I didn't care. And when I did care, it was too late." This lack of emotional connection is often what makes these cases so haunting. It's not just the act. It's the silence afterward, the calm in their eyes, the fact that, in some twisted way, they never saw their victim as a person. As we continue this story, we'll dive into the legal battles and societal fallout from some of America's most infamous juvenile murder cases. How do you sentence a child for a crime that would horrify adults? And what happens to them after the cell doors close? When a child commits murder, the crime is not the only thing under investigation. So is the entire justice system. In a nation built on the idea of justice for all, what happens when the accused is just 11 or 12 years old? Do we treat them as children in need of help, or as monsters who must be removed from society? The answer varies. But the debate has become one of the most emotionally and politically charged conversations in American law. Let's go back to 1999, Pennsylvania. A tiny rural town was stunned when 11-year-old Jordan Brown was arrested for the murder of his father's pregnant fiancée. She was shot in the back of the head while sleeping, just moments before Jordan boarded his school bus. Police believe Jordan used a youth model shotgun, given to him as a gift. His motive? Allegedly jealousy over the new baby and changes at home. Jordan was tried in juvenile court, and for years the public was torn. Should a child so young face life behind bars? Or should his age protect him, even from the worst of consequences? After nearly a decade of appeals and media coverage, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his conviction. Jordan, now a young adult, maintains his innocence. But for the family of the victim, there was no closure, no peace, just a haunting question mark. These cases highlight a deep flaw in our system. Juvenile justice was not designed for murderers. It was created to rehabilitate young offenders, those who stole, fought, or vandalized. But when the crime is rape or homicide, especially premeditated, everything changes. And states across the U.S. have been forced to adapt. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in Miller v. Alabama that mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional. The court said that young people have diminished culpability and greater capacity for change. But this didn't mean freedom. It meant that judges must now consider a child's age, maturity, home life, and potential for rehabilitation before sentencing. In real life, this has meant resentencing hearings for hundreds of juvenile lifers across the country. Some walked free, others remained locked up. But the shift sent a clear message. Childhood matters, even in the courtroom. Not everyone agrees. Victims' families often argue that justice delayed is justice denied. To them, the killer's age doesn't matter. The act, the violence, the death is final. So why should mercy be extended to the person who ended a life? This moral divide was on full display during the case of Cyntoia Brown. Though not a killer child in the traditional sense, Cyntoia was 16 when she killed a man who had solicited her for sex. She had been abused, trafficked, and exploited for years. Her case sparked national outrage, not because she was a cold-blooded murderer, but because she was seen as a victim who became the accused. After serving 15 years, Cyntoia was granted clemency in 2019. Her case reignited debates about how we treat vulnerable youth, especially those pushed into violence by a system that failed them first. But what about the cases where there's no clear sign of trauma? No history of abuse? What if the child seems normal? That's what made Berrydale Lukaitis so terrifying. In 1996, the 14-year-old walked into his school in Moses Lake, Washington, with a rifle and opened fire, killing 3 people. He wore a trench coat and quoted a line from a Stephen King novel. "This sure beats algebra, doesn't it?" He had no history of abuse. He wasn't bullied. He just wanted to kill. His trial revealed an obsession with guns and violence, but no clear motive. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, but later became eligible for resentencing due to the Miller decision. His case, and others like it, reveal an uncomfortable truth. Some children are capable of unspeakable evil without any clear trigger. So how does a court measure evil? How does a jury understand the mind of a 14-year-old who smiles while describing murder? That's where forensic psychologists come in. These experts assess everything from IQ and impulse control to empathy and trauma history. They try to determine whether the child can be rehabilitated or whether they're a danger forever. But even science can't always give a clear answer. Human behavior, especially in the young, is unpredictable, and public sentiment swings like a pendulum between mercy and vengeance. The justice system is caught in the middle. Prosecutors face pressure to be tough on crime. Defense attorneys argue their clients are still children. Judges weigh lives on both sides. And the media? It often paints in black and white. Angel versus demon, monster versus innocent. But real life is rarely that simple. A 13-year-old who kills may grow into a remorseful 30-year-old. But the families of the dead never get their loved ones back. And society must decide, do we believe in redemption? Or do we believe some crimes are too horrible to forgive? These are the questions we'll explore in the final chapter. Because when the trial ends and the sentence is read, the real story is only beginning for the killer, for the victims, and for the world left watching. The prison gates close. The trial is over. The media frenzy fades. But for child killers, the story is far from finished. What happens after a child takes a life? Do they wither behind bars, consumed by guilt? Or do they grow into something else entirely? The answer isn't simple, and for many, it's not even satisfying. Because when you try to chart the future of a killer child, you're not just measuring time served. You're measuring the weight of a life lost, and whether redemption is ever truly possible. Let's start with rehabilitation, a word that sounds hopeful, even comforting. In theory, juvenile justice focuses on it. In practice, it's a complicated path. Some young offenders do change. Curtis Jones was just 12 years old when he and his sister murdered their father's girlfriend in Florida in 1999. The siblings had suffered years of abuse, and the killing was their desperate escape. Curtis spent 18 years in prison. He later became a pastor. Today, he speaks to troubled youth about the dangers of unchecked trauma and the need for faith, guidance, and healing. His transformation is real but rare. Then there's Mary Bell, a British case that still haunts the world. In 1968, 11-year-old Mary strangled 2 young boys in England. Her case shocked the public, not just because of her age, but because of her chilling lack of remorse. After serving 12 years, Mary was released, given a new identity, and began a new life as a mother. She reportedly lives quietly in the UK today. Mary's case poses a difficult question. Should society allow a second chance to a child who killed? Or does the very idea dishonor the dead? In the US, the answer often depends on how the crime was committed and how much media attention it received. High-profile cases rarely end in redemption. Eric Smith was 13 when he lured a 4-year-old into the woods and beat him to death with a rock in 1993. He spent nearly 30 years in prison before being released in 2022. While some argued he'd paid his debt, others felt he should never walk free. And in some cases, child killers become even more dangerous adults. Nathaniel Abraham was 11 when he killed a stranger with a rifle in 1997. He was released at 21, the maximum age for juvenile detention in Michigan. But within years, he was arrested again for drug and assault charges. Whatever help he received in prison didn't hold. Which leads us to this truth. Some child killers never escape their darkness. They may wear the mask of change. They may learn the right words. But inside, they carry the same violence that once made headlines. So how do we prevent the next tragedy? It starts with recognizing the signs and acting early. Many child murderers show red flags before they kill. Cruelty to animals, obsession with death, fascination with weapons, withdrawal from peers, sudden rage. But too often, those signs are ignored or dismissed. Parents, teachers, and counselors don't want to believe a child could be dangerous. But history tells us otherwise. And in a digital world, the warning signs have become more complex. Some kids post threats online. Others isolate into dark corners of the internet, where they're radicalized by violence and encouraged to act. In some tragic cases, intervention might have saved lives if only someone had paid attention. But perhaps the hardest truth of all is this: not every killer is created by trauma. Not every violent child is a product of abuse. Some are born into stable homes with loving parents, good schools, and opportunities, and they still choose to kill. That's the mystery we may never fully solve. In the end, the story of child killers is not just about crime. It's about identity, redemption, loss, and the razor-thin line between innocence and evil. For every killer, there's a victim. For every arrest, a family shattered. And for every second chance granted, there's always a risk. So, can they be saved? Sometimes, yes. Sometimes, no. But one thing is certain: their stories should not be forgotten, because behind every headline is a warning, and a reminder of what can happen when the darkness in a young mind is left to grow. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for more true crime story.